Charlie, I was very sorry to hear you got knocked out of the cup.
Not half as sorry as I was, I can assure you.
Brilliantly got the winning goal for Chelsea. They paid Dundee £72,000 for him, which looks a very good investment.
Charlie Cooke didn't disappear. He was deleted, not for lacking magic, but for moving like it cost nothing. He played in an era of elbows, fists and broken ankles, and still, he floated, like a ghost wearing blue silk. He didn't kick, he didn't roar, he didn't play to conquer, he played to breathe life into the game. And that's why they marked him for elimination. They couldn't understand elegance, couldn't contain it, so they tried to crush it. He got kicked down and stood up with class. He got frozen out and still created the pass that saved the day. He never fought dirt with dirt. Just balance, silence, and a left foot that made violence irrelevant. But football doesn't like that. It rewards the scream, not the silence. The crunch, not the curve. The menace, not the artist. So when the medals were handed out, his name went missing. When the headlines were printed, they focused on the muscle, not the mind. He built their rhythm. They benched him for noise. He gave them poetry. They labelled it softness. But legends aren't always loud. Some live in the moves no one remembered to credit. Charlie Cooke didn't vanish. He was the spotlight they chose not to shine. Subscribe. Because the game forgets those who made it beautiful without asking for applause. They try to erase him with boots, with elbows, with knees, but you can't erase a ghost. The 1970 F. A cup final wasn't football. It was sanctioned warfare. The pitch was mud. The scoreboard was blood. And Leeds came armed with fists instead of tactics. Billy Bremner didn't play. He hunted. Low centre of gravity, high centre of violence. He marked Cooke not with position but with scars. Jack Charlton was next. Clenched teeth, flared knees. He headbutted anything that moved, Cooke included. And then there was Norman Hunter. Bites your legs. If the ball was past him, the man wasn't. He swung late. He tackled blind. And when fists flew, he didn't miss. They thought brutality could break brilliance. But Cooke had other plans. In the replay at Old Trafford, as the mud deepened and tempers snapped, he lifted his head and dropped a cross that cut through the war. Peter Osgood dived. The ball hit net. 1-1. One moment of art in a game that forgot what beauty looked like. Reporters said you'd need a death certificate to get a free kick that night, because nothing less would make the ref blow his whistle. The violence was the law. The artist was the crime. But Cooke survived. Not untouched, but unbroken. Leeds won the fight. Chelsea won the final. But only one name walked off immortal. Not the bruisers. Not the men who bit legs. The man who made poetry out of war. And they never forgave him for it. Charlie Cooke didn't need to speak. He passed the ball. Osgood wrote poetry with it. That cross in the cup final replay. A curve made of silk. Osgood's diving header, a thunderclap made of gold. The crowd sang for both. The bridge pulsed when they touched the ball. It wasn't football, it was theatre. But Dave Sexton didn't want theatre. He wanted obedience, discipline, control. Osgood was too alive for that. He laughed too freely, spoke too honestly, partied too publicly. And the punishment came swiftly. No warning, no ceremony, just a transfer, signed in silence. Osgood was sold to Southampton. To the shock of fans, to the fury of teammates. Even the dressing room found out after. They called it football politics, but Cooke knew better. It was a quiet execution. One Sexton ordered, and no one stopped. Cooke stayed. He always stayed. But something in him broke. Not just because Osgood left, but because he wasn't allowed to fight for him. The bridge lost its lion, and the wizard stood alone. Still dribbling. Still dazzling. But colder now. That day something sacred died. And the ones who loved Chelsea the most watched the betrayal unfold in real time. Peter Storey didn't chase applause, he chased ankles. And when Cooke danced past most men, Storey gave him something else. A reminder that beauty always bleeds. They met in league wars. Chelsea versus Arsenal. Cooke's grace versus Storey's grit. Each game a chessboard soaked in bruises. Storey didn't hide it. He said it himself. I wasn't paid to be nice. He broke legs, shut down flair, and smiled after. Charlie never hated him. He pitied him. Because Storey won battles, but lost himself. Cooke played for memory. Storey played to survive. And when the boots came off, Cooke taught kids in America. Storey sold stolen cars in Britain. While Cooke built Coerver Coaching, Storey built a rap sheet. Drugs, smuggling, prison. That was the real tragedy. The system rewarded violence until it didn't. Then it spat the enforcers out. Storey was the shadow that followed Cooke, the system's favourite weapon, until he outlived his usefulness. But Cooke kept walking. Not with speed, but with something rarer. Survival, skill, and a legacy not written in scars. Steve Archibald didn't fail. He was erased by a rule, by a pen stroke, by a system that decided 2 foreigners was too many. Barcelona signed him. He delivered. Goals, link play, charisma. But then Lineker came, and Mark Hughes, 3 foreigners. Only 2 could play. Archibald became a name on a bench, then a name on a list, then a name forgotten. Not for a mistake, not for a scandal, just for existing in the wrong era, at the mercy of a rule. Charlie Cooke saw it from the other side. He wasn't benched by law, he was benched by ideology, by a manager who wanted order more than magic. Game by game, his spotlight dimmed. Not because he declined, because the system stopped believing in flair. What happened to Archibald wasn't rare, it was standard. Cooke, Archibald. 2 magicians punished for doing the unteachable, for making the game look like art. The system doesn't value art, it tolerates it, until it gets uncomfortable. Then it does what it always does, chooses safety, control, and forgets what made us watch in the first place. Charlie Cooke never chased headlines, but he remembers what they called them. Underachievers. A team too beautiful to win ugly, too artistic for trophies, too soft for war. And somewhere beneath that quiet smile, that word still cuts. Because they had the skill, they had the crowd, they had moments, but never an era. They danced through defences, but couldn't break the chains of chaos. Why? Because the era belonged to the butchers, to elbows and ankles, to headbutts hidden in corners, to knees left in late, to the welcome tackle that told you this wasn't ballet. Cooke didn't just dodge tackles, he dodged a culture that punished elegance. He slipped through bodies like smoke. But smoke fades when the wind howls. And in 1970s English football, the wind was violent. They all played through pain, but they also played through pints. The training ground was often the pub. Discipline came second to bravado, and it showed. They were knocked out of Europe when they could have gone all the way. They threw away league campaigns they should have walked. And when trophies came, they never stayed. Years later, Cooke admitted it. The regret sat quietly in him. Not regret for the art, but regret for what they let slip. We underachieved, he said plainly, and you could hear the ache behind it. He regrets not speaking more, not standing firmer, not forcing the world to protect artists. Because in that era, a man could break your leg and still shake your hand. The referee wouldn't send him off. He'd wink. It wasn't just the opponents, it was the system. A system that rewarded violence but forgot the beauty that brought fans to the gate. They were entertainers. But even entertainers bleed, and when they bled, no one clapped. Cooke wonders now if they'd just been a little colder, a little more ruthless, less trusting, less romantic. Would they have been remembered not as flair players, but as champions? The wizard never lost his touch. But touch doesn't lift cups, and in a world built on war, art gets buried under bruises. When the castle crumbled, Charlie Cooke didn't beg to stay. Chelsea were relegated. The noise was gone. The fans stopped singing. The boardroom stopped pretending. And Charlie, the player who once lit up Stamford Bridge, walked out through the silence. Not because he was finished, but because the dream was. They don't talk about that enough. What it means to stay graceful while everything around you dies. He had given Chelsea 373 appearances, scored 30 goals, dragged the club to the 1970 FA Cup, delivered magic in the 1971 European Cup Winners' Cup, made fans believe football could be art in an era of violence. But the system never rewarded subtlety. So he left England with his head held high and landed in America. Not to hide, to plant something new. They said he was done, but in the US he redefined legacy. Charlie Cooke didn't just coach, he built Coerver Coaching, a global football method now used in over 40 countries. He trained kids, not kings, focused on skill, not stats. and taught a new generation how to control the game with feet, not fists. That's legacy, not trophies. Transmission. And as of 2025, he's 83 years old. Still living, still teaching, still proving that the game didn't end when he left the pitch. It just changed shape. He had a family, a quieter life, but he never stopped watching the game from the shadows. And every time a young kid fakes left and glides right, without violence, without panic, they're echoing a man the Premier League forgot. They rewrote the era. But they couldn't rewrite him. Charlie Cooke never screamed, never swung fists, never asked for revenge. He just kept gliding, past defenders, past headlines, past the history books that tried to leave him behind. Because he was never meant for their system. They celebrated the loud. He moved in silence. They praised the bruises. He danced between boots. They remembered the chaos, but forgot the calm. And yet, some legacies don't need noise to last. They called him a luxury. But he became a teacher. They called him fragile. But his methods outlived the violence. They called him finished. But his shadow still runs beside every player who values touch over terror. Osgood was sold. Hudson was exiled. Sexton erased the flair. But Cooke, he never gave them the satisfaction. He disappeared from the spotlight and became immortal in the grassroots. He didn't chase approval. He built something greater. And now, decades later, when the kids cut through the field with elegance, they carry him. No statue, no headline. But skill survives where brutality fades. That's why Charlie Cooke is still here. Still rare. Still unbeaten by the world that tried to break him. Subscribe if you're one of the rare ones who still remembers. If you still believe in the art. If you know that real power leaves no bruises, just silence and awe.